Okay, so this is going to sound bizarre and made up, but I swear on my left nipple that this really happened. There are several witnesses as well. Even if I can't explain why someone would do this, I'm fairly positive this is not anything paranormal. I live quite a distance off the road in an unremarkable house on private property. My neighbors are all older family members who go to bed extremely early and whose children have already grown and moved out of the house. In summary, there are no mischief makers to play pranks on us around here. A few months ago, my mother and I stayed up late one evening, watching television together. At around 3 a.m., I turned the television off and decided it was about time to go to bed. As I was leaving the room, though, I began to hear what sounded like carnival music playing outside my house in the front yard. It was loud and very close. My mother heard it too. We immediately went to the window to investigate. She peeked outside, but she couldn't see anything but pure darkness. Everyone else was either already asleep for the night or away on vacation. The lights were off in all of their houses, and none of them would be caught dead listening to anything but country music anyway. We were miles from the nearest city, so it couldn't possibly be the product of noise pollution. You can hear when a car has just pulled up into the yard, but there was no sound of a car either. The silence where we live is usually deafening. All you can hear is the ringing in your own ears. So where did this song come from? Who was playing it? And why? I was very unsettled by the idea of a stranger in our backyard playing carnival music. I guess to me it suggested malicious intent. My father and uncle later mentioned that 20 years ago, when my parents first moved in, the electrician had come to install a ceiling light and stopped in the middle of his work, saying he could hear Pink Floyd playing in the front yard. Neither my father nor my uncle had heard this. My father has a bit of a hearing problem, and my uncle is also a much older man as well. They kinda laughed it off and thought the man was insane, but it really freaked the electrician out. He kept opening the door and trying to find the source of the noise to no avail. Then it hit me. The song I heard that night was Pink Floyd's Cirrus Minor, the part that sounds like carnival music. I played the song for my mother, and she began freaking out, saying, Yeah, that's what I heard. Who the hell would sit in my yard at night at 3 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, playing that same song which isn't even that popular, 20 years later with no car? Where did they come from? They would have had to walk several miles to get here. Aside from this, the only other strange thing we experienced that would suggest there was an intruder would be that we feel and hear knocking on the living room window late at night sometimes, around the same hour. Sometimes it's so intense that the entire wall of the house is rattled, and it sends the couch against it into a reclining position. There are no nearby trees to tap the glass, and no animal except a human could possibly reach it. Fortunately, this has stopped over the last few weeks. In 2007-ish, I was about 13 years old. My brother, my cousin, and her boyfriend thought it would be fun to walk around an abandoned mental hospital for children in the afternoon. It had been abandoned within just a few years due to the discovery that spores were causing cancer in the patients. The area was huge, acres and acres of land. That's because the hospital itself was not just one building. There were multiple buildings marked A, B, C, etc., all arranged in a circle. Each building housed children with a specific illness or disorder category. The middle of said circle was a rusted-out playground, the perfect setting for a horror film. We shortly arrived and parked in front of Building C. As we were walking, every single time I was near one of the buildings, I would hear this children's laughter. It was echoed, but sounded almost like it was right next to me. Very odd. My cousin tried opening a door to Building B, but we found that it was locked shut. A couple of seconds later, though, there was a loud bang coming from the other side of the door. My brother, being my brother, always said, "It's just kids partying in there," as his reasoning for pretty much anything abnormal ever happening. My cousin then screamed and pointed up at a window, claiming she had seen a girl with a patient's gown on. I got too freaked out and asked if I could go back to the car. My cousin's boyfriend escorted me and the rest of them decided to continue exploring. Once I got to the car, I started to hear laughter again. I blasted the radio to try and tune it out, but the laughter got louder and louder, almost as if they were mocking me. I decided to put my hands over my ears and put my head between my legs, and yet the laughter never diminished even slightly. When they all came back, my cousin said she heard loud laughter and a gurgling sound so frequently that she made everyone else come back with her to the car. My brother, still being my brother, continued his claim of kids being in the buildings and screwing around. Fast forward to the evening. I was sleeping facing the wall. I woke up with my right side being quite sore. I decided to turn over onto my left side and face the room. When I opened my eyes, I saw a girl with a white gown on, standing over me. Immediate shock shrouded over me, not being able to quickly break eye contact with her. I eventually blinked though, and when I opened my eyes, she had disappeared. I ended up running to my parents' room and sleeping there for the rest of the night. So, for clarification, this was back in 2014, during the summer after The Purge came out, which will be relevant information later. My dad, little brother, 11, neighbor, 11, and I, 15, were staying at a cabin for a week during our summer break to go fishing. On our third night of staying there, around 11 p.m., some guy came up and knocked on our door, asking if we would help jump his car. Apparently, the battery had just died while he was driving by. My dad agreed to help him, but told us to call the cops if he wasn't back in 20 minutes. Our cabin was in the middle of the wood, you see, and he would have had no reason to even be that far down that road unless he was intentionally on his way to visit our cabin. 30 minutes passed by before my dad finally came back. He told us the man had been asking a bunch of weird questions. How many of us were staying, those sorts of things. When he did jumpstart his car though, the guy immediately left. 2 nights later, my brother, neighbor, and I were up late watching TV in the living room. At some point around 1 a.m., a different man showed up at our cabin, wearing the resort's logo and uniform, with the official resort car as well. But he didn't knock or anything. He just stared into our cabin, standing on the porch. We had no idea how long he was standing there, but at some point my neighbor noticed him staring in at us and jumped up and ran over to the bedroom to wake up my dad. My dad, obviously annoyed at this point, walked up to the door while not opening it and asked the guy what he was doing there. The man said he'd gotten a call from the reception desk that our TV was not working and he was there to fix it. Meanwhile, our TV was obviously working since he'd seen us watching TV on it for who knows how long. Anyway, my dad told him we didn't need anything, and he should leave right now. The guy then proceeded to say we were out of toilet paper, and he needed to refill it for us. Again, my dad said we didn't need any, and the man should just leave. He continued to get ruder and ruder though, asking about towels, our phones, any other thing he could possibly refill or fix. Eventually, though, he gave up and left. The next morning, we called the reception desk to report this because this guy was obviously out of line. They tell us they don't send out anyone that late anymore for services for the cabins, and it must have been a mistake. They asked us to describe the man. About 55 years old, tall, light blonde, grayish hair, blue eyes. Well, when we do, they tell us that nobody with that description even works there. At this point, we were all extremely freaked out and trying to figure out who the hell he was and why he was there. Turns out that apparently that same weekend there had been hundreds of people across the country attempting to recreate a real-life purge. We don't know for sure if that's what his intentions were, but I'm assuming the first guy, the one with the car problem asking weird questions, was there to scope out our situation possibly, and when he saw it was just one adult with 3 kids, he relayed it to his partner, the second guy, that we'd be a good cabin to rob, hurt, etc. I'm just happy my dad never unlocked our door for the fake resort guy, cause who knows why he went through all that effort to pretend to work there. This is my first ever post on Reddit, but I thought this would be a perfect place to share. This happened over 10 years ago, but still creeps me out to this day. Quick backstory. My parents are divorced, and at this time I lived full-time with my dad. I had just left my mom's house because I was saying goodbye to my dog that we were putting down that day. I was a complete mess and so sad. My dad is in a bowling league and has been forever, so I was returning home to an empty home. I pulled into my driveway and saw the landscapers were there. However, there were way more than usual, just standing around. They were standing in the driveway and did not even fully move as I was pulling in. They proceeded to try and get my attention while I was just trying to pull into my garage. I ignored them and almost backed out of the driveway and went somewhere else. I just immediately got a bad and uncomfortable feeling about this entire situation. I got inside my house and immediately burst into a fit of crying. I mean, I was a teenager and I was extremely sad my dog was being put down. I could hear the men talking outside. I went upstairs when I heard the doorbell ring over and over, and then the knocking at the door. I locked myself in my bathroom as the knocking and ringing of the doorbell continued. They kept yelling, "We know you're home!" It went on for what felt like forever, but probably lasted around 20 to 25 minutes. I remember calling my dad as well, but he didn't answer because he was busy. I convinced myself they had a concern or a question or something, but if that was the case, then they could easily reach out to my dad when he got home, leave a note or give him a call later or something. Instead, they harassed me, a teenage girl, when they knew I was home alone. I began to wonder if they were even real landscapers at all. There were so many of them, just standing around in the driveway not even doing anything. We have a small yard and I've only ever seen maybe 1 or 2 guys doing our landscaping before. It was so creepy, and eventually after a while they just left. It started out a bad day, and it turned out even worse. This happened last month. I like to smoke in the evenings, but I was having a very bad day. So at 4 p.m. I decided no one was likely to bother me anyway for the rest of the day. I decided to go smoke early. I know this could have made me extra paranoid for this encounter, but even with a sober mind, what happened still creeps me out. So there I am, freshly high and sitting in my living room, when suddenly someone knocks at my door. I ignore it because I'm high as fuck, and also half naked, wearing only a loose house dress because I'm one of those at-home nudity type people. After several minutes though, the person is still knocking. I'm concerned that it's my upstairs neighbor, and she knows I'm home. I trust her, and I know she'd laugh it off if I was half naked, so I finally got up and went to answer the door. I got to the hallway in front of the door, and I could immediately tell it was not her. I had never seen this person before in my life, but he kind of looked like a catalog model. Very conventionally attractive people kind of freak me out sometimes, and I'd never seen someone before in person who looked so model-like. I immediately wanted to nope out of the situation, but he saw me through the window on my door, and I felt trapped. The dude had already been knocking on my door for several minutes at this point, you know. I opened the door just a crack to see who he is and what he wanted. This is a mostly safe town, and it was only 4 p.m. I didn't want him to notice that I was high or half naked, though. He claimed to be a representative from a local cable company and had all of the costume to confirm it. Said he wanted to talk to me about getting cable. I had just moved into this apartment, and I realized he must have been assigned to recruit me. I didn't want cable/internet. I decided to go cable-free, and I was sharing the internet and the associated bill with my neighbors. Before I really got a chance to assess the situation, though, I accidentally expressed my concern that I was afraid my cat would slip out of the house. Well, next thing I know, he's standing in my apartment with me in this tiny hallway with the door closed. Now he was in my house, and I couldn't hide myself anymore. I just wanted him to leave. Now, I can't really explain it or justify it, but I have a really hard time being straightforward with people I don't know well. I wasn't concerned for my safety or anything at this point, because we'd only been talking a few minutes. I just knew I wanted him to leave, and I wasn't interested in his services. I was also afraid to tell him I was sharing the internet. It was the same company he was representing, because technically my neighbors and I are two different households, and I wasn't sure if they would get in trouble because that wasn't within company policy. The first excuse I tried to get him to leave was, "I already have your cable services at my last apartment. I'm actually transferring it over this week." Apparently that excuse wasn't good enough. Then I tried, "I'm not sure if I want cable. I might just go with the internet, and I'm thinking about using a different company." That didn't fly either. I told him I needed time to think about it, that I wanted to evaluate my options. I asked if he could come back another day. At this point, he's been there a long time. He never lost his big smile, but he started to get more and more irate with me. His smile stayed the same, but his tone started to get frustrated as he repeatedly explained the same deals to me over and over. His face started to do this thing. I don't know how to explain it other than a flicker where his whole face just changed expressions and then quickly changed back to a big smile. He appeared to be getting desperate to get my sale. He explained to me that it's so inconvenient for him to have to come back and I need to make up my mind right now. I told him no a few times leading up to this point, but he wouldn't take it for an answer. If I were sober, I would have point blank told him to leave. But, of course, at this point, I was not sober. Finally, though, I got to a point where even that couldn't stop me. I told him point blank, "Look, I'm really uncomfortable, I'm half naked, I'm also really high, and I don't make decisions like this while I'm high." He apparently thought that was really funny. He started trying to sell to me even harder. He said something along the lines of, "I know you're high." But, So, with my last excuse gone, I finally agreed to sign up for a setup date. I didn't have to give any money. I just had to give my email address and the date I wanted his installation guy to show up. I asked if the guy could show up 3 weeks from now, to give me plenty of time to cancel. He initially agreed, but instead signed up to have the guy show up 5 days later. He told me that if I wanted to cancel, all I have to do is call him, specifically. He also says if I want, I can just not answer the door when the installation guy shows up. He followed this up by saying one last thing. "Of course, if you cancel or don't let the guy in, I'll have to come back to make sure everything's okay myself and find out what's going on." He tells me it'll take 5 minutes to sign me up or whatever the installation process and asks to come into my living room to sit down. I tell him no and he goes to his car to finish the application. It took him 20 minutes. While he was gone, I walked around my apartment, only to see that he'd been talking to me for 40 minutes. He came back and told me the farthest installation date he could choose was only 5 days away. His smile came back 100%. No longer frustrated, face wasn't flickering. He left immediately. The very next day, I called the cable company to cancel the services with my last apartment, but also to ask about this guy. I tell him how persistent the man was and how he made me so uncomfortable. They told me they heard the salespeople can be very aggressive and offered to put it in my file for him to never come back to my place. I agreed immediately and stressed that I really never wanted him to come back. The woman I was talking to offered to email her supervisor about the issue as well, to really cement he wouldn't be coming back. I agreed to that. The woman was an understanding angel. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I open up the door and that guy is there. He had a smile on his face, but I could tell he was very angry. "So, what's going on?" he asks. "I thought we had everything figured out." He started to question me. I was stunned. Not only was he back, but we had literally spent 40 minutes of him trying to talk me into a service I clearly didn't want. Now he was at my doorstep trying to figure out why I'd canceled. "I thought you wanted this." I told him firmly I'd changed my mind and he needed to leave. "Well, is it worth my time to come back again?" I said no, and he turned around and quickly walked off without saying anything else. People keep telling me I should report the fact he came back when he wasn't supposed to, but I'm concerned because he already knows where I live. I'm also concerned because IMO, when someone says I'm too impaired to make this decision, I think a salesman should be obligated to back off. I'm mostly concerned though because there was no indication I was home when he first came over. There were no vehicles, lights, or noise to imply I was home. He wouldn't have been able to see me in the living room either from my door, but he continued to knock for like 20 minutes, like he was confident I was just slow getting to the door. I know I'm paranoid, but I actually wonder if he peeked through my windows before coming to see if I was actually home. Maybe I should report him? I'm in my early 20s and female. I posted here a few days ago and you guys seem to really enjoy my creepy encounter, so here's another. Like I said in my last post, I moved here a couple of years ago on my own. About 9 months after I had moved in, someone started pounding at my door a little bit past 11:30 p.m. I was already in bed by this point, and I was awfully concerned about this person at my door. My upstairs neighbor's aquarium had broken the night before, and it was flooding into my living room. Since I had just had a fiasco with my neighbor late at night, I figured it was probably just her again, and almost opened the door without hesitation. Right before I opened it up though, I had this horrid feeling wash over me. Instead, I meekly whispered, "Hello?" through the door. Immediately I heard a man reply, "Hi, I'm a friend of David Jones." The second I heard him speak, my blood went cold. I had a very terrible feeling about this. David Jones was the name of the previous tenant. He was very elderly and disabled. He was in a wheelchair and lived with a helper, and he passed away before I moved in. I looked out the peephole to see a man wearing sunglasses at almost midnight, a black face mask, and a black hoodie with the hood all the way up. David doesn't live here anymore. I'm sorry." He pounded his fist on my door and laughed. "Oh yeah? Open the door and prove it." Like I said, David was in a wheelchair and needed a ramp for the door, which was removed before I ever even moved in. I also drive a motorcycle, and my immediate neighbors don't drive any particularly wheelchair-accessible vehicles. With all this in mind, you would think someone who felt comfortable enough with David to be knocking on his door in the middle of the night after at least almost a year of no communication would be able to evaluate the situation and see there were no wheelchair modifications. Well, this wasn't the case. He began pounding at the door, telling me to open up immediately. I told him David was not here. I was not opening the door, and he needed to leave right now. He stood outside my place for a few more minutes. I was scared, standing frozen by my door. I saw him begin to walk away. I was still by my door when I heard someone rustling around my back door, over by where my bedroom is. I was still frozen. I didn't want to believe that someone could actually be by my bedroom window. For clarification, the area by my window is attached to a common area yard for all the residents. It's directly off the sidewalk of a relatively busy area, so it isn't uncommon to have someone in the yard, but it's certainly uncommon to have someone directly up against your porch and windows. I heard something loud in my bedroom. I grabbed my pepper spray and cautiously approached the room. It appeared no one had broken in, but something seemed really off. After a while, I hadn't seen this person anywhere, and I went back to bed. In the morning, I came out for a smoke and saw my bedroom window screen had been torn off. It was bent all out of shape. Definitely didn't look like it just randomly fell off. I knew exactly what had happened. That guy had ripped off the screen and tried to get in through my bedroom window. Thankfully, it was locked up and I have window jammers as well. This obviously frightened me though, but there wasn't much I could do at this point. A few weeks later, someone tried to open my front door in the middle of the day. No knocks, no nothing. I just heard my door clearly tried to be opened. I shot up and ran to the peephole to see that same man dressed in all black, hood up with his black sunglasses on. He tried the door a couple of more times and pushed against it really hard. I was trying to think of something intimidating to say or something I could say to get him to stop. My brain decided it was a great idea to just hit the door. It worked though, so hey. I slapped the back of the door really hard. The guy jumped about 3 feet in the air and ran away. Now here's where I think it gets really bizarre. So I googled my address. Everything online for my current residence still lists David Jones as the active resident. I 100% think that guy saw me, a young female all alone, and googled my address, trying to get my trust into opening the door. I think after that didn't work, he was still trying to get in, hence the bedroom window. Him coming back a few weeks later, though, is very weird in my opinion. You'd think he would either move on to another target or be much more interested in trying again sooner. I think he definitely did not know David. I don't think he owed him money or was family or any of that. The timeline is just so bizarre. Maybe he's already had other victims and just decided to try my place. At any rate, though, his plan didn't work and he was now gone. Literally months go by at this point. Someone gently knocks at my door at around 9 p.m. I go up to look, and what do you know? An individual covered in black head to toe, with the sunglasses covering his eyes. I didn't answer or make any noise. He slowly turned the door handle and pushed the door, then took a few steps back and walked to my neighbor's door. I heard him then try theirs. My neighbor was a middle-aged man living alone. When that door didn't open, I saw him walk up the stairs and could hear him trying them one by one. This apartment had 5 people living in it, including a child. That door didn't open. He tried the remaining door that currently didn't have anyone living in it. Failed again. That was creepy as hell. Okay, so that made me think that maybe he didn't single me out as a vulnerable female, because he seemed to just be trying to get into anywhere he could. I do think it was rather strange that my cat seemed to hate him as well. I've never seen either of them hiss until this guy was at my door. They were always clearly very frightened and ready to fight, which is majorly unlike either of them. You honestly wouldn't even know they have teeth or claws unless you're a cardboard box or a laser pointer. Fast forward to early January. Our clad in black lad is back. My brother, who looks quite intimidating, happened to be over for a visit. He heard someone try to open my door. He got up, opened the door, to see this guy actively trying to force open my middle-aged neighbor's door. The guy sprinted for his life. My brother wasn't aware this was an ongoing issue, and where he thought it was weird, he wasn't trying to run after this guy either. Today, I was taking a nap, and around 2 p.m. I hear this aggressive knock at my door. It pauses for a few moments, then picks back up. While this is happening, I heard my upstairs neighbors quickly close their windows. I was tired, and figured it was the same creep, so I didn't even bother looking. After a few minutes, I heard him knocking on my neighbor's door. After that failed, he went upstairs and knocked on the 2 doors up there for a bit. After a while, the knocking stopped, and I heard my upstairs neighbors open their windows back up. I couldn't sleep anymore, so I grabbed my smokes and headed outside. I could hear my neighbors through their open window. Their little girl was asking her mom who that man is and why he kept doing this. I know of him bothering them at least twice, but it could definitely be more as well. I've reported all this to my landlord. She's absolutely no help though, and basically just tells me not to answer the door if I feel unsafe and call the police if it escalates. The police don't have a quick enough response time to come out here when it's happening. I did call them before, but I don't have much of a description for them to go off of. They basically just told me the same thing as my landlord. You would think someone ripping my bedroom screen off would count as escalating, but I guess not. This guy has been bothering me for a little over a year now, and apparently all of my neighbors as well. It seems really weird for a criminal to do, right? Just keep trying to break into the same group of apartments over and over again, at all hours of the day and night. I guess I just have no idea what he's really after. For anyone who saw my last post that might be wondering if this is the same neighbor that tried to drug me, I suppose it's possible, but I don't think he has the same build. The peephole does give some type of distortion, so I guess it could be that. I really could be, I'm just not sure. I think it's highly unlikely though. This stranger is harassing my neighbors and I consistently, and none of us even know what he looks like. Don't open your doors to strangers, folks, no matter what time of day it is. My neighbor is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. Over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water, all the while screaming epic win, epic fail, epic maintenance of the status quo for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So when he knocked on my door the other day and told me he was going to be away for a few weeks and asked that I get his mail, honestly, it was quite a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind I had knowing I wouldn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, what I could only assume was a birthday card as well. Then one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written, "Return to sender." I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder. I quickly realized there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thunk and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. But you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something. No point setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package, and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Ah, shit, I cursed. I hoped I hadn't broken anything important, but I figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbor about it, and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbor would come back to claim it, and then I forgot all about it. Until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage-to-house door, but it came in at a slow progression. It was a sickly sweet odor similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after I smelled it, I genuinely assumed that's what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house or something. It was only when I realized the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went to look for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odor knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was that box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat-of-the-month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there, though, for the box to have been so large and heavy? An entire freaking cow? I covered my nose as I approached that box, a pair of scissors in my hand. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it though, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger. I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices though. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces in one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I was not looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the box. I thought the smell couldn't possibly get any worse, but as I flipped those flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad, I staggered back and had to force down the puke begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran out the door for a breath of fresh air, but in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the very fabric of my clothes, it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep that horrid smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell was allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to the garage, the flaps of the box still open as though inviting me to look. I was prepared, a clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of the box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbor, dead. Still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally they took me in for interrogation. Kinda hard to not suspect the man with a corpse in his garage, after all. Thankfully, though, they soon realized I was not involved. My DNA might have been all over that box, the smell might have left a mark throughout my house, but there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbor's own hands that proved my innocence. A vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, though, I saw it. My neighbor was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He'd brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours or days, I'm honestly not sure. My neighbor recorded a few clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm here. Still got plenty of food though. That kind of stuff. Then, on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door. What is up guys, Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the content of this video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you do decide you like my content enough to subscribe, please be sure to hit the bell button right next to the subscribe button and turn notifications to all so you can be notified of every video I post in the future. If you don't feel like doing that though, I post a video nearly every day, so you can just come back every now and then and check up on what you missed. If you guys have any criticisms on what I can do better or any feedback on the stories in the video, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, as I always enjoy reading all the comments and I try to give them hearts and respond when I can. If you guys would like to reach me for any reason, or you would like to send in a story to be read, you can go ahead and take a look in the description below the video. You'll find a link to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, and Twitter accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is if it has one, what type of story it is if it has a theme, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Last but not least, I also run 2 other channels, Mr. Blue Skies and Darkest Hour, where I do true crime videos and dark documentaries respectively. If that kind of content sounds interesting to you, why not go ahead and check it out and see if it is for you. Aside from that though guys, I think that's pretty much it for now, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.